Hello, and welcome to YWCA's Facebook Live Connect, Heal, Learn speaker series. I'm Laura Gomez-Horton, Clinical Director of the YWCA. For those of you who are unfamiliar, YWCA Greater Austin provides individual, couple, family, and group therapy, care coordination services, life skills classes, school-based services, consultation, training, and advocacy. Our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, stand up for social justice, help families, and strengthen communities, which we've been doing in the Central Texas area for over 115 years. We truly stand at the intersection of mental health and social justice. This speaker series focuses on inviting subject matter experts to discuss topics connected to mental wellness and social justice. This month, in anticipation of our Mental Health Symposium theme, we will be talking about the role of joy, play, and rest in healing. And today, I'm joined by some of our presenters. Today, we are joined by Bree Liu, Bree Hamlyn, and Eva Escobedo. Welcome to you all. So before we begin, maybe we can go around the room here and you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your current role at YWCA.
I guess I'll jump in. My name is Bree, and pronouns are she, they. I am one of the lead therapists and Warmline and the Warmline supervisor here at YWCA. I'm excited to be here to talk about this topic today.
Okay.
I'm also Bree, and I use she, her pronouns. I am also one of the lead therapists, and I'm also excited to be here. I use a lot of movement and play in my therapeutic practice and with groups.
Hello, I am Eva. I am one of the clinical supervisors at the Y. And I integrate laughter in a lot of my sessions and a lot of my work.
Well, welcome to you all. So I look forward to having this conversation about how to use the joy and play and rest in healing. So I guess that can be the first question that we go with is, what is the role of joy, play, and rest in our lives in general?
We learn a lot about ourselves through play and movement, and it is kind of the underpinnings of like we learn a lot in development and in those early childhood years, but the capacity to learn through play and movement, it stays with us through like all our lifespan. So that's what's coming up for me right now. It's just that we really learn about ourselves and how we relate to others and how we relate to our needs, getting them met, etc., through play and movement. Enjoy.
Sorry, my dog is barking.
I really value the role of rest. Something I hear a lot and I've seen a lot on social media is the idea of rest as resistance. And I think a lot of healing work involves, recognizing the grind culture that systems have set up for us. And so being able to rest is a way to heal from some of that like trauma that has been put upon us.
Sorry, my dog is barking. Oh well, it wouldn't be a conversation about joy and laughter and movement without a barking dog. Hold on. Sorry. Gabby, come here. Okay, so this is Gabby. Okay, so I think that joy and laughter and movement are always in our life, but in our very United States culture, we have associated those things as being childish or something. And so we have created a culture of solemnity that zaps us out of all of those things. And when we zap these things out of our lives, we end up with depression and with burnout. right? So the opposite of joy is not seriousness or work, it is depression. And I love that sentence because it's absolutely true. And also as therapists, if we don't integrate joy, even in our work with the most serious and sometimes the most challenging circumstances that our clients bring in, we will lose our capacity to hold hope for them and for ourselves. So, yeah.
Well, you all kind of moved into this area that I was hoping would come up a little bit later, but since we're here, I mean, and I loved your term, Bree, that you said, the grind culture that we have. We have this culture that, you know, you're expected to work 40 hours a week, but really you're expected to work 60 hours a week. And if you're not working that amount of time, you know, then you're deemed as lazy or, you know, just, you know, like incompetent or something. And so you are expected to grind. And our language even has it, you know, we have different phrases like idle time is the devil's playground. And Bree Lou mentioned another one earlier today. I couldn't remember what.
Work hard, play hard. Like we have to work to earn our right to play and even rest.
Yes. So yeah, that you have to work hard in order to earn the right to play. So yeah, it sounds like you all are already talking about this. So how does this mentality that we continue perpetuating and continue participating in, how does that lead to oppression and social injustices?
Oh, I did skip ahead, didn't I?
It's just so embedded in our culture, right? This idea that we have to earn our right to play, which then translates to we have to earn our right to be here, meaning we don't have self-worth already, just as is, which I think all of us on this call like disagree with very vehemently. And then it just translates to so many different areas like perfectionism. I'm losing my train of thought, so I'm going to pass the mic off to someone else right now, but it just leaks into everything that we do, like as therapists and then outside of the therapy as well.
I feel like I see it most in some of the populations I work with a lot, chronically ill and neurodivergent folks. And then if we layer, you know, taking into account what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like
Intersection.
Intersection. Thank you. Then there's like additional layers of oppression for those folks. You know, when baseline doesn't exist for you, baseline in terms of what we consider the norm, it feels even more challenging and frustrating to try to keep up with that. I actually saw a really interesting thing this morning on social media, which was defining the difference between laziness and I think executive dysfunction. And it's like, and I don't know if I agree with the lazy definition, but basically it was like, if you sit and stare at the pile of laundry and say, no, I don't want to do that. Versus if you sit and stare at the pile of laundry and say like, I need to pick up the clothes. I need to pick up the clothes. And it's, your bodies just won't shift into that, make that transition. So yeah, those are a couple of examples of how I really see it with a lot of the folks I work with.
I think the other idea that comes up is that play and rest, including like vacationing and taking time off and things like that, is for people who are privileged because
it's a luxury.
It's a luxury. Because the majority of people are in the grind, working that many hours a week, sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs at a time to make ends meet. So how does that kind of come into play? Is play and joy only for the privileged?
So I'll tackle that question. And I will tackle it because I have lived half my life in different countries. And so I think that there's a big difference. So we tend to think of play as something that happens outside of work. But that is not universally true. In many, many parts of the world, there's playfulness in people who are doing, while people are doing their work, even if it's hard manual labor or whatever. People can have in many parts, radios are playing music, and there's a joviality in exactly those situations. So how can we, my big question is, how can we bring and allow and facilitate and cultivate a culture where we don't have that separation, where we can be doing everything that we do, whatever it is that we do, but also with lightness and joy and playfulness instead of fear, which is very often what's happening, and resentment, and just like the constant threat, we feel so unsafe in our work environments and in many of our places where we exist, schools even, that totally zaps that playfulness and that joy out of our lives. And then one more piece, the idea of laziness and motivation, number one, are capitalist, and they have seeped into our religions, which is a nice intersection, capitalism and religion. And anyway, and so how we have, or how these words have acquired a moral quality. But if we take a step back and we question, okay, so where are these, where is this coming from? You're lazy, and in whose interest is it that we internalize those values? Well, who are we making money for? Who is getting rich because we're working like crazy, right? And so it's really easy to see that connection. And again, as Laura said at the beginning, where we are at the intersection of social justice and mental health, and that's exactly that, right? Remembering, okay, so what are the forces, those oppressive forces that have seeped into our lives and are like tentacles, that have such a hold on us. I'm done.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned some things there about, but the word you didn't mention, it was another question that I had, is that a lot of times people feel guilt also for having fun or for having joy in their lives, especially when they have hard things going on in their own lives or in people close to them. They feel guilty about, here I am having fun and enjoying myself while all these other horrible things are happening. The thing that comes to mind is, like, unfortunately, almost on a daily basis, there's a mass shooting of some kind. And so how do we continue, what gives us the right to be happy or to have joy when those horrible things are happening? And so I hear some of that guilt pop in.
I think it's displaced guilt, because I'll formulate what I'm thinking. These things are already like our right to have. So it's like a myth that it's a myth from all of these systems like capitalism and other oppressive systems that we have to earn the right to do these things. So this is like this guilt actually should be like placed back on the product of the systems that we work under and socialize under. I don't know if that makes sense.
I have a different take on that.
Okay.
I think that in the face of tragedy, if our obligation, actually, I think, is to have gratitude, and with gratitude comes joy, right? So I am so happy that I have the privilege of being alive. I rejoice, and I'm so grateful that my child was not killed today. And so I want to dance, and I want to sing that I am so fortunate. So I think that gratitude is what we owe, because to people who have tragedy in their lives, which we also will be touched by or have been touched by. And it's not the bearing this suffering. Suffering doesn't serve anybody. It's almost like an act of injustice towards the gifts that we do have. So for me, having gratitude and celebrating is the most humble and generous thing to give.
Yeah, just to being able to distinguish gratitude from guilt when sometimes they're very intertwined for us, being able to pull them apart.
Yeah, so going back to the healing part, when we think about healing, and we're talking about the role of joy, play, and rest in healing. When we think about healing, we often think of healing from emotional traumas or from a medical procedure. When I mention healing today, what I'm kind of thinking is, and I'd like for us to consider, is healing as recuperating or rejuvenating on a daily basis, to be able to face our everyday challenges and our everyday stressors. How does joy, play, and rest help, particularly with healing or recuperating, regenerating?
It's funny. I recently put on my Google Calendar, like I use the word rejuvenating to be like, all right, your calendar says you're done with your work for the day. It's time for rejuvenation and rest. So that was just a little side note that you said that, Laura. I think though, Evan and I actually talked about this some months ago. Like what does healing mean? We really talked about like increasing capacity to live our lives in the way that we want, that's more aligned with how we ideally want to. And I think that it takes joy and play. Those are some of the things that increase our capacity. That's often how I think about it and have thought about it since.
I love that. The healing can be these little glimmers, these little moments, and they can then add into bigger shifts, but in these small little chunks. Small little moments. Mm-hmm.
I think that also as we engage in laughter and in joy and in play, that is the way that we can swallow sometimes insights that might be incredibly painful to process, right? So it's like it's the balm with which we can face our challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that we haven't touched on too much yet too is all of these things, joy, play, movement. A lot of them have a social engagement, social connection aspect too. So all of these things help us tap into our humanity and also into that capacity to be with and to find softness in another person's eyes or a puppy's eyes. And it helps, it's that balm, it helps thaw us out. Mm-hmm.
It makes me think of when I was working for the National DV hotline, me and my fellow advocates would joke a lot about how doing that kind of work, you often develop maybe a slightly darker sense of humor. And it's needed as a balm. I remember we often would share this post. It was actually a cross stitch, but it said, "What doesn't kill you makes you weird at parties." And it's one of those things that like it helps you get through your day, and a rough call or a chat, or in this part of my life, a rough session. So I think it's so true. And I'm excited to hear more about it. from Eva this week, that idea of insight.
And Eva mentioned laughter, and laughter, obviously, I often joke around with about hard things because that's my way of coping. That's my coping mechanism, is you make a joke around about it, or you bring some levity to a situation. I mentioned earlier also that when I was a kid, we used to get the Reader's Digest, so that's how old I am, but that's okay.
I used to read that too.
I don't even know if they still make them. They probably still do.
No, I used to ferret away copies.
But these little Reader Digests would come to our house, and then there was a section that I always ran to, or like skipped forward to, which was called Laughter, the Best Medicine. And so and it had just like jokes and things like that in that section, or funny stories. So is laughter really the best medicine? What does laughing do to your mind and to your body? If anybody can speak to that.
Well, I don't like reductionist sentences anyway, so I'm sure it's part of a range of best medicines, but I know that laughter, that it does tap into that social engagement system, which for humans is deeply tied into our sense of safety and our sense of belonging and authenticity. So it taps into that system that helps put us at ease, and also helps us like perpetuate pro-social behaviors, among many other things. Like, I'm pretty sure it circulates like stuff in the body. I can't think of the term right now. Yeah. And then I'll hand it back over to Bree. And then maybe Evan will be back by then.
Well, I was thinking about the physiological impacts of the movement of laughing. It made me think of like when we talk about the stress response cycle. I really honed in on when they talk about movement for accessibility, and how like even squeezing and retracting your muscles. And so I'm thinking like, oh, I bet that's one of the ways that the stress response cycle is completed. So a very physiological, like healing thing happening there from that physical movement. I also think I agree with Bree on the safety thing. I think that's why it's so important to incorporate it into sessions. And if we can laugh with clients, that helps them to feel safer, to maybe be able to sit with vulnerability a little bit more, and thus then we have like this bigger healing things. So yeah,
it seems like Eva's going to be talking about that in her presentation too, but laughter kind of she puts it as it disarms us. It puts us at ease, because it's kind of like this signal of like, I'm friend, I'm not foe. We're okay, laughing with each other.
Yeah.
Was it cortisol that you were trying to think?
I think I was thinking about like, more like on the oxygen level and like circulating like blood, actually, because it is like a laughter. When you have like that full body laugh, is that full body experience. And you're right, Bree, it's often listed as one of those in like Instagram posts, like one of the ways to complete the stress response cycle, to engage in like party laughter.
Yeah, I know that I've heard that there's specifically like laughter therapy, and
oh yeah,
things
there's
like
laughter yoga. It's fun. It's kind of cheesy at first, but it's fun. And it really helps us access these parts like Eva was talking about earlier. These parts that in US culture is deemed as like not appropriate for adults to engage in anymore, but we need, it's not true.
Yeah. So you all in your roles hear a lot of stories of trauma and survival, whether it's intergenerational trauma, chronic trauma, one-time event trauma, in addition to countless life stressors that people experience in their lives. what is the role of joy and play and rest in your own lives?
I'm trying to integrate it in pretty much everything. I mean, you know, within reason that I do. If you're looking for like very specific examples, sometimes I like to run a lot in the mornings, and sometimes to make it extra fun. I wasn't consciously thinking of this, but I just started to realize I would sometimes start like singing along or like scream singing along to my songs. I also listen to a lot of like 2000s like emo songs when I'm running. So I'll just be like scream yelling to like Take Me Back Sunday, and then I'll get my arms like all moving. And I know it looks really silly, but honestly, I don't care. It's a lot of fun. So that's one way that I do that. But yeah.
I'm forever going to picture you running to Good Charlotte now.
Yeah.
It was funny when you put fun and run in the same sentence. I was like, we're supposed to come up with fun things, Bree. I'm totally teasing. But I mean, like on that, I always struggled with like physical, like especially like ones that keep your heart rate up. So like when I discovered, like I practice karate, and like so it's a very like strength based, and it's very empowering. So it's like it feels like joy and play on from different components on a very like both emotional and physical thing. And I try to incorporate it throughout my day-to-day as much. Like that's one of the reasons like I'm glad to be a part of YWCA, because I feel like we have, like I was talking about, like play incorporated into our work compared to my other job, which it's not so much that. And then like when I'm at home, this is a benefit of pandemic, probably a lot of people can agree with. I might take 15 minutes of an hour and go play with the cat and the dog, and you know, things like that. To get my face away from the screen for a bit.
It was in between session naps. So great to be able to do at home in the luxury of your own bed. And also like, you know, breaks for like cooking and making things with your hands that accesses play, creativity, which we didn't talk about too much today, but it's like they're all like emergent qualities of one another and spin off of one another.
Yeah, and I think that you all are also talking about it's a variety for different people. Like Bree Hamlyn had a reaction to Bree Lou running, whereas I had a reaction to her mentioning cooking, because that's just not my deal. So it looks like we kind of lost Eva along the way here. So
She's playing with her dog.
she might be playing with her dog, hopefully. Pets are really, there she is.
Sorry, my fridge died and the repairman came at exactly the only half hour when he wasn't.
Of course, because that's life.
That's life.
So maybe since you're back, maybe you want to quickly just talk a little bit about what role joy, play, and rest plays in your particular life, in your life.
Sure. So the people who know me know that I'm horribly inappropriate.
That's very true, yes.
I always misbehave, and that's part of playfulness for me. So yeah, I can't imagine. So a very long time, actually, when I started this, so I've been doing this more than 30 some years. And I remember very much at the beginning of my career, I was working at a mental health clinic, and we accrued like one sick day a month, and I would always take it, and I would take it to play. I would always play hooky, and I think that I did the right thing, because I think that health is not. We think about like, oh, I need like a health day when I'm sick, but I think that a health day is to preserve health, and being able to rest and have like that playfulness, that mischief, because laughter and joy come often with like this almost this transgression, this mischief, and that brings spark and aliveness to our lives, right? That's why we have actually like Six Flags and things like that, because we need that excitement is it, right? So yeah, so that's the role of joy in my life.
Thank you. I think that this particular session has been the epitome of going with the flow, obviously, which is what, we try to do with having fun and being joyful, is that, hey, you can't be super rigid and have everything structured, because even when it is structured, it's obviously things happen. Dogs happen, cats happen. I'm surprised Bree's cat hasn't jumped in the video yet. But yeah, and it's about keeping that levity. Are there any last words that you all would like to share that maybe we didn't talk about regarding joy and play, and anything else we'd like to bring attention to?
Let's do more of it.
It's not childish. And who cares if it's childish? What does childish mean?
I think that that's really important what you just said, that I think a lot of times we think it's childish, but why is that a bad thing, or what does it even mean? Yeah.
As children, we are born perfect, and we are perfect. It's like societies and oppressions and shoulds and all these horrible things that really harm our kids, and then they end up in therapy. So if we could just be like children and be more unadulterated, we would maybe need less therapists, and that's not a bad thing. Then I would be a baker.
Well, thank you all very much on those last words. We can say goodbye to our audience for today, and thank you again for all the amazing work that you do. And I'd like to remind everyone to keep this conversation going, and if you want to connect with services at YWCA, you can find us through our website, or you can call our main line. Thank you all very much, and go have some fun or rest and just lay there, whatever you need to do.